Hello Mila, hello Jack. Hello everybody else who's watching, and welcome to Storytime with Grandad. Today's book is from the saga of Noggin the Nog, and is Noggin and the Flowers. In the lands of the north, where the black rocks stand guard against the cold sea in the dark night that is very long, the men of the Northlands sit by their great log fires and tell a tale. They tell of Noggin, king of the Nogs, and of his friend Romph, who knew the names of many flowers, and learned the name of the flower he did not know. Romph was a little man. He came from the hot water valley beyond the glass mountains to bring the greetings of his small people to their king, Noggin the Nog. Romph did not think much of the plant life around the city of Nogs. It was nothing like the lush, fertile, hot water valley. "This is a bleak place compared with your home, Romph," said Noggin apologetically as they walked with Nooka through the heather on the hill behind the town. "And this is the bleakest part of all. See the ruined castle of Nogbad the Bad?" The black castle of Nogbad the Bad was ruined, but it didn't seem quite as ruined as usual. The roof was patched, the door was mended, and the garden, once a wilderness of brambles, was neat and trim and ablaze with flowers. "Aye," sighed Romph, "that's more like a garden." "Welcome, welcome," said a thin, friendly voice. A bent figure with apron and trowel and a trug came towards them. It was Nogbad the Bad. "Why, Romph, how nice to see you again! And Noggin and Nooka, do come in and see my garden. I love to show it to my friends." Nogbad was very different from his old self. He seemed to be gentle and friendly, and pleased with his garden. That soon he and Nooka and Noggin were chatting gaily about gardening. Only Romph stood apart and seemed watchful. "These flowers," he said at last. "I know most flowers, but I don't recognize any of these." "Ah, yes," said Nogbad, smiling. "These are plants that I've grown from seeds I was given by an old friend. They are very strong and hardy. They can grow anywhere, even up here in this windy place." "Oh, I wish I had some flowers like that," sighed Nooka. "I've been trying to grow climbing roses up the wall on the castle for years now, but they always die during the winter." "Aha," said Nogbad, and he darted into his potting shed. There he opened a big book and looked through it. He took a small box from a shelf and unlocked it. He tipped a handful of fluffy seeds into a leather bag and presented it to Nooka. "A gift from one gardener to another," he said politely. "I hope they will grow well and please you." Nooka planted her seeds that evening by the castle wall under their bedroom window. She expected them to grow, but not to grow as fast as they did. In the morning the tendrils were halfway up the castle wall. In the afternoon they flowered an abundance of large pink blossoms. In the evening the flowers wilted and the petals fell. In the night the seeds blew away on the breeze. "Oh dear," sighed Nooka. "I hoped they would last a bit longer than one day." Next morning they heard the voice of their son Nut calling from outside. "Hi everybody, look at this!" Noggin and Nooka saw that the seeds had taken root, not only from the earth, but from the gutters and cracks in the stonework. Green shoots were growing and reaching out their leaves and tendrils. The flowers that day were marvellous. Everybody was delighted at the sight, except Thor Nogson, who thought they were a nuisance. They got in his way, and he raised his sword to cut them. "No," shouted Nut, "don't cut them down." How do I go through the arch? Asked Thor Nogson glumly. You ask, said Nut. Watch. Nut stood in the archway and said in a loud voice, Please, may I pass? At first it seemed that nothing would happen, but slowly the branches moved aside. It would be quicker to cut them, said Thor Nogson, and he raised his sword again. The flowers cringed away. Thor Nogson, said Noggin sternly, the flowers are our guests. Put away your sword. Go to the town square and give out a proclamation. The plant is called Royal Rambler. It may not be cut by sword or shear in my kingdom. That night the seeds flew again, and under the castle wall, Romph swung his butterfly net to catch some as they floated down. Next day, nearly half the town was covered with flowers. They were beautiful, if inconvenient, and the Nogs knew they must not harm them. Olaf the Lofty, the court engineer, led Noggin to the castle walls. He showed him that the very stones were shifting where the roots of their guest flowers had crumbled the mortar. Now Noggin began to worry. Romph knows about flowers. Ask him to speak to me, please. But Romph was not to be found. He had taken the seeds and was on his way to find out more about them from Nogbad's big book. He did not want to walk up to the front door of Nogbad's castle. He slipped over the wall and crept into the potting shed. The big book was there. It was a catalogue of plants bred by the Black Sorcerer. Romph shuddered as he turned the gruesome pages until he came to a picture of the flowers on Noggin's castle. Grundlestein's Greater Gripewort. Hardy swift creeper. Stone growing. Much used for breaking sieges, gates and castle walls. Good worker, intelligent and willing, but not suitable for magic or black arts, as it has an obstinately kind and friendly nature. Must be called away after use to prevent spreading. Romph heard a sound. It was a rustling whisper, the leaves rubbing together, but it made words. Nogbad, Nogbad, come in. Hide, hide. The flowers were trying to warn him. Too late, he slipped through the door and came face to face with Nogbad. This time, Nogbad was not so friendly. Spies, is it? Nosy, trespassing little persons. Nogbad picked him up by the scruff of his neck like a cat and pitched him in a dungeon. The dungeon was small and damp. The only light came from a tiny barred window. Romph stood on the stool and looked out. He saw strange flowers very close because the window was at ground level. I thank you all for warning me, he said. I am sorry I was so slow. Nogbad, Nogbad coming, rustled the flowers. Romph heard the terror in their voices, and Nogbad appeared in the garden. This was the Nogbad he knew, scowling and fierce in a cloak and helmet and sword. Nogbad leaned down to speak to Romph. Well, my nosy friend, he sneered, I will tell you the good news, which my crows have brought me. Noggin's castle is about to crumble and fall, and I, only I, Nogbad the Bad, know the words to call away the plants. I will say those words and save the castle and the town. For a price. Do you know the price, little man? Romph nodded. Nogbad strode away, chuckling. Black despair filled Romph's heart. What would happen to the poor Nogs? What would be the fate of Noggin and Nooka if Nogbad became king? How would he fare locked in Nogbad's dungeon? The flowers were whispering. Seeds, they hissed. Seeds! Aye, I have some gripewort seeds, said Romph. The flowers waved with excitement. Plant seeds, they hissed. Plant seeds! Crack! Seeds crack stone. Plant! Plant! Romph drew his short sword and waved away the earth floor under the wall by the door. He planted some seeds firmly in the holes and covered them over. Even he had not realized the strength and speed with which they could grow. As he watched, the earth under the wall slowly swelled and split. The wall itself grunted and grated and heaved as the pressure of the seeds under it grew. It took almost an hour for the stone to give way, but in the end there came a crunch and a crack as a large piece of wall broke away and fell in a heap. Romph jumped through the gap and ran through the castle, spilling seeds as he ran. Outside, the flowers waved to see him. Thank you, flowers, he shouted as he ran. Good luck, rustled the flowers, as Romph leapt from rock to rock down the hill. Far above him, in the sky, a bird was wheeling. Its keen eyes were searching the ground. It saw Romph and folded its wings to drop like a stone. Romph had been attacked by hawks and eagles many times in his life. He turned at once, sword drawn, on the shadow that fell towards him from the sky. Graculus, for he was the bird, whipped aside from the blade and slithered onto a rock. You're a stupid bird, shouted Romph. I could have spiked you for an eagle. Sorry, said the bird. I was in a hurry. Noggin sent me to find you. He held up his arms. Graculus flew down to him. Romph grasped his thin ankles and was lifted as if he was as light as a feather. Graculus lowered him gently to the flower-decked courtyard of Noggin's castle, where Noggin and the council of elders were listening in horror to Nogbad the Bad. There is no way to save the town and the castle except by my magic words, said Nogbad. Give me the crown that is mine by right, and I can destroy the plants. If not, the city will be destroyed by them. Choose. Romph whispered in Noggin's ear. Please will you give me the curved brown island beyond the South Bay? Yes, of course, replied Noggin. Then Romph stepped forward and spoke to the elders. I come from Nogbad's dungeon. I do not think he tells the truth. The flowers are not magic. Let me speak to them. Nogbad snarled viciously, but he did not dare attack Romph. Flowers, hear me, Romph shouted. Grindelstein's greater gripeworts, hear my words. Slowly the flowers turned towards him. Flowers, you bear an ugly name. You bear the name of the terrible dead giant. Will you have a new name? Will you be Noggin's Royal Rambler? The flowers nodded as if the wind blew amongst them. Will you live in your own place in Noggin's kingdom? They nodded and nodded and nodded. So be it, shouted Romph. Give us every seed you make today. Soldiers will pass among you. Please place the seeds in the receptacles provided, and tomorrow we will plant them again. The flowers nodded and began to wither and crack their seed pods. Noggin and the soldiers took off their helmets and passed among the flowers, who dropped their seeds most carefully into the helmets. Nogbad saw that his plan had failed, and he turned to run from the courtyard. The Nogs were too busy to stop him, and the plants moved aside to let him enter a long tunnel of greenery. Then the plants closed over the tunnel behind him. Nobody ever saw him come out of the other side. Perhaps he never reached it. That night, the Nogs stacked their helmets and sacks of seeds into a longship. Then, early in the morning, 12 strong oarsmen rowed the ship out to the curved brown island beyond the South Bay. There they planted some of the seeds in the short brown grass and let the rest blow across the island. Even as they rowed home, the colour of the island was already changing from brown to pale green. They heard a distant rumbling. "Thunder?" asked Noggin. "No," answered Thor Nogson. "Look." They looked across the bay to the black castle of Nogbad the Bad. It was no longer black. All over it was ablaze with pink flowers. The thunder was the roar of falling masonry as the walls, roofs and turrets slowly crumpled and fell in, prized apart by Grundlestein's Greater Gripewort, or, as it was now called, Noggin's Royal Rambler. The end. Goodbye, Mila. Goodbye, Jack. I'll see you soon. Goodbye, everybody. Bye.